it can take 10 years to become a manager or get into any type of management. Whereas here in the U.S., to get into a management role, 3-5 years.
Nurses in the United States have access to education in abundance. If you solely want to come to the United States just to make more money, I would say you just need to stay put. I just don't think the financial advantage is that significant.
I know a lot of our nurses are even working rotating shifts, that just the struggles they have physically, 1 week working days, the next week, working nights.
I think it's important for us to say no healthcare system is perfect. There's a moment when everything changes.
When a nurse leaves behind what's familiar to answer a deeper calling.
And when a leader makes a decision that doesn't just impact the numbers,
but people, teams, and lives.
Welcome to the Culture Shifters,
where nurses and leaders transform the culture of care.
These are the stories of those who crossed borders,
challenged the system,
and chose to lead differently.
Because changing healthcare starts from within.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Culture Shifters, where nurses and leaders transform the culture of care. I am Lisha Crytzer, one of the co-founders here at NurseMatch.
And I am Kim England, the other co-founder of NurseMatch.
Well, we are so excited. These first few introductory podcasts are just to kind of give you an overview of NurseMatch, who we serve, and get you excited about what is to come. You ready, Kim?
I'm ready.
Well, today we're going to talk to you about nurses, and we have two clients. So one of them, of course, are hospitals across the U.S., and our other client are our nurses that are primarily located in Canada that are looking for opportunities in the U.S. So today's podcast is all about nurses wanting to come and work in the United States, and talk to you about some of those reasons and hopefully give you, especially if you're a hospital, just some background on, if you're curious, why the interest is there, and hopefully provide some really well-grounded information.
Fantastic. I'm ready to get started.
All right. So first of all, I think it's important for us to say no healthcare system is perfect.
Correct.
I mean, I know we complain about our healthcare system all the time. And, Canada is wonderful. Their healthcare system is not perfect either. And of course, it's very different. Socialized medicine versus, our private healthcare system here. So very different systems. And I think they both offer great things. And I think they both have big fallacies as well. Wouldn't you say?
I would totally agree.
So again, it really comes down to personal choice. And the fact that Canadians do have a choice, and U.S. nurses have a choice as well, is really why we are here. And so today, again, I'm not trying to persuade anybody. I'm just here telling you the story, what we have seen over the past 25 years, the push and pull factors of what pull nurses in to the United States from Canada. And I'm also wanting to shed light on what I think is interesting. And Kim, let me know if you agree, but the 4 to 5 points we're going to cover today, they've been the same for 25 years.
They have. I would totally agree with that.
Absolutely. And like any business, recruitment, you have your, ups and downs a little bit. And there are some, blips that happen that kind of impact the market. COVID, of course, was one of those huge blips for us. The political environment is, a blip right now.
Right.
So we always kind of get back to a set point. And, the pull factors that we're going to introduce to you today are tried and true, wouldn't you say?
They are. I completely agree.
All right. So number one, I want to talk to you and the nurses listening. It's about career growth and opportunity. That is one of the biggest pulls and desires for nurses coming to the United States. So Kim, tell us about that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of our Canadian nurses are definitely looking for more opportunity to grow. Currently, just, from the conversations we've had with our nurses, that, it can take 10, 20, 30 years to become a manager or get into any type of management. Whereas here in the US, if you are on a career path and if you want to become a manager, if that's, something that you are looking to do, then you can be on a path to get into a management role, 3, 5 years. And some nurses we have taught to actually get into that role quicker.
Right, right. Well, I think here too, in the United States and really anywhere, I mean, if you want to be in leadership, if you're on that management track, if you have that desire within you to serve others at that level. And that's something that in the United States and a lot of the healthcare systems, they have so many amazing career ladders built in to accommodate those desires of their nurses to help grow them in their career as well. I think another point to that career growth and opportunity, let's talk about education and just the access to not only continuing education, if you want to go on to get your master's, if you want to go on to get advanced certifications. Nurses in the United States have access to education in abundance.
I would agree with that. I know a lot of our nurses have shared with us, if they need to get their ACLS or BCLS, that they have to pay out of pocket, to go to a local university there in Canada to get that certification. Where we're so blessed here in the United States that all of your hospitals, I would say, have their own education departments and are able to support their nurses with any of those certifications.
Absolutely. And I know, a lot of Canadian hospitals do have education departments as well. I just think that the access and the desire for our nurses to get as much education on the hospital's dime, essentially, it's definitely something that is it's just like I keep saying abundant, but it is so abundant in the United States. And I think that is something that is very attractive to nurses coming from other countries to the US is that access to education. So that's career growth and opportunity. We see that a lot. And I love when we hear from our nurses that have actually been promoted. We get calls and text, director of the OR. I know a few years ago, we ran into one of our nurses and they came to one of our events as the chief nursing officer. So that completely blows my mind, but it also just excites me. And I know that's why we do what we do.
Yes, I agree. I think when we ran into the gentleman that, came to our career fair, he was representing his hospital and found out he was the CNO. It was so fun. I'll never forget that moment or that memory.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about financial opportunity. So, usually, when it comes to pay rates, those hourly rates that every nurse is interested in, sometimes that actual hourly rate doesn't quite compute to being an advantage. And a lot of times, sometimes it's not on paper initially. You have to always consider, the exchange rate, and there's always a
Exactly.
difference. And so on average, it's about 30%, but that does fluctuate. So when you're looking at a pay rate in the United States of $50 an hour, that in Canada might be $80 an hour. So you
Right.
always have to take those conversions into consideration when you're getting quoted that hourly rate. So sometimes that initial quote from a US employer can sound like a huge pay cut. Now, I'm going to be the first to say, backtrack a little bit here. If nurses solely want to come here, if you solely want to come to the United States just to make more money, I would say you just need to stay put. Just because I just don't think the financial advantage is that significant. There are some other reasons, but as far as actual dollar for dollar, I think there is a slight improvement in the US side, but it also depends on what state that you're living
Exactly.
in. So a lot of our Canadians want to move to California. So because of that, I'm going to say it's going to be kind of a wash because of the taxes in California. So you always have to take that into consideration. So just like in the US, states are different, just like your provinces are different from a tax perspective. However, some of the other expenses, like taxes are where we're seeing the difference. So the actual take home, what you're getting to take home and put in your pocket, there's definitely a significant difference. And that, of course, is, of course, due to the taxes.
Yes, I would totally agree on that. And also, we have an amazing staff here at NurseMatch, and we also have some amazing partners. And so, if before you make that move, that's definitely something you want to look at. If you want to talk to an immigration attorney, or if you want to talk to a tax accountant, we can definitely, or we have those resources that we can connect you with those individuals.
Absolutely. And I think too, as far as, finances, I know you mentioned this a lot, Kim, is stability.
Yes.
Some of our US listeners may be surprised to hear, but many of the Canadian nurses that we support work 2, sometimes 3 jobs in order to bring home full-time income. So the stability issues we just don't see here in the US. Nurses that want a full-time job, that is not a problem.
Right.
And I'm so surprised, I don't talk to nurses as much as I used to, but I do know today they still ask, "How long do I get to keep this job?" I'm like, "This job is yours until you decide you no longer want it." So that is definitely another reason that kind of layers on top of that financial stability, that financial opportunity is, you're not going to have to work 2 to 3 jobs to bring in
Right.
that full-time income. And
Right.
that also then impacts, the shift situation, right?
Right.
So
I know a lot of our nurses are even working rotating shifts, which I know just, from visiting with them, that just the struggles they have physically, one week working days, the next week, working nights. And we've even talked to nurses that their different shifts are a day and a night, within the same week. And so that is something you're not going to see very rarely if it happens, here in the US. But most of our shifts, you can either pick, a day shift or a night shift or mid shift. But I know just from speaking with our nurses that, the rotating shifts can really be a struggle when it comes to, planning their week out with, different things with their families or their children.
right. Perfect. So that's number 2, financial stability and opportunity. The next one is probably my favorite, and it is lifestyle and weather. And I have to be honest, when we started this business many years ago, and hospitals would ask, why are these nurses interested in the States? I almost felt like, lifestyle and weather just sounded insignificant. But it's not, Kim. It is a huge driver. They are done shoveling snow.
I just say we hear that all the time. We have so many nurses, that are looking, for sunshine, and so we have hospitals that are close to beaches. We have some nurses that, love the mountains, and we have hospitals that are close to the mountains. But we do have those nurses, that are also looking for all 4 seasons. I think
Right.
that's what's so nice about the US, our climate. Wherever you want to reside, or even if just want to live somewhere that you can access the beach, 2 or 3 hours down the road. That is something that we have an abundance of.
Right, right. And also we already hit on this a little bit, but those rotating shifts also impact lifestyle. So
Absolutely.
in the United States, there are some hospitals that do offer rotating shifts if you prefer that, but typically you're either days or nights. You're
Right.
not going to be asked to doing both. And so because of that allows you a little bit more stability in your life planning and you getting out there and actually enjoying the nice sunshine weather that you're going to be living. Another lifestyle piece, which I know we don't hear a lot about, but I think it's actually probably one of the more important reasons as far as lifestyle is the ability to own a home in the United States and really put some roots down. And yes, you can buy, a home in Canada, but the access is definitely a little different. And again, I'm not saying there's one system that's better than the other. However, in the United States, when we, do our mortgage, it's for 30 years. We have a locked in interest rate if that's the type of loan that you get. In Canada, you can get a mortgage for 30 years, but you have to reapply with a new interest rate every 5 years. So if you're a young family and, you're, trying to grow professionally, that uncertainty can be very risky for families to get into a home, not knowing what the market's going to do in 5 years. So a lot of our nurses are so excited to get here and buy their home.
I know. We have so many nurses that will send pictures or, text messages, emails with them and their family in front of their new home. And just the excitement to get to share that with them is priceless.
Absolutely. And of course, I think it's important to just mention as well that, most of the nurses that we work with, I would say 80% are not originally from Canada.
Right.
Like the United States, we've immigrants from all over the world and they land in Canada and also have their eyes set on the United States. And once they become a Canadian citizen, that just opens the door for them. And, the opportunity of living and working in the United States, that dream just becomes a lot more realistic for them once they're in Canada. So, because of that, that other pull factor I want to talk to you about is green card sponsorship. So,
Yes.
Cam, tell us about that.
I would say 99% of our hospitals do offer the green card if that is something that you desire. You can come over on the TN visa, so seamless, and it's good, for 3 years. And then every 3 years, you go back to the border and present your documents, and it's indefinite. So a lot of nurses, stay on the TN visa, but there are some nurses that desire, to put down roots here in the US, and they do, go for the green card. And then I just can think of since we've been doing this for so long, we've seen so many nurses that once they get that green card, are reaching back out to us with pictures. And, it's just so exciting to just have a little piece of, all of these nurses' dream on getting here and becoming, citizens or permanent resident. But yeah, there's opportunity for green card, or if you want to just stay on the TN visa route.
Absolutely. I think really, other than some other small nuances, the only other thing that's coming to mind right now is, nurses' desire maybe to try other specialties, get into a different unit. I do see a lot of our hospitals really on board with that. They're
Yes.
open to training you, giving you that pathway. And I think the feedback that we've received in Canada, it's a little bit more difficult. You can't, but I think maybe it takes a little bit longer. But in the United States, if you're interested in changing from med surge to ICU or ICU to peds, I know that's completely opposite, but we see lots of department transfers, and
Yes.
our hospitals build out those training programs so that you're successful.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And when you are, going through the process with us, I know our recruiters, that's something that, they're always visiting with our nurses about to, find out, what specialty you're in right now, of course, but if there is a specialty that you are longing to be in, then once you have your interview or when you're interviewing with our hospitals, that is something that you can share with them and they can visit with you about, what that road would look like to get into that ICU if you're coming from med surg position.
Absolutely. And then I think I just want to mention, in case we have, any hospitals on here listening as well, what are the top locations that Canadian nurses want to work in?
Right now, and this has been pretty much, throughout the 25 years that we've been here, a lot of nurses are looking for, California, Florida, and Texas. But I think what is so fun is because we have hospitals all over the US. I'm just thinking right now of a hospital that we work with in Virginia, that we have over 200 nurses working there within that community. And so sometimes, you don't even know, the other states that are here in the US besides California, Florida, and Texas.
Right.
And so when you do interview with our recruiter, and I think that's where, our name, NurseMatch, comes from. We are going to suggest and match you with a hospital that we think that you're going to thrive in. And that might not be in California, Florida, or Texas. I would say probably 80% of the nurses that come to us with a state in mind end up in a different state and have just a thriving career.
Absolutely. That's one thing that I loved back in the day, and you'll learn this about this as we have more episodes, but when we started this business, we used to host career fairs, and we'd have hospitals from, like 15 different states, and we'd have Canadians come and they're like, oh, I only want to interview with, California or Texas. And by the end of the event, the 2-day event, Kim, what
Yes.
did we hear?
Guess what? I'm ending up in New Mexico or
Right. So I think for all of us, it's just a frame of reference. We have these things in our mind, and, until we sit down and learn truly what the opportunity is about, what the lifestyle is like, then it starts to kind of open your mind and open more doors as well. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. But I think most importantly, I'm just so excited that we're taking the time to finally launch this podcast that we've talked about for so many years, and just seeing the major impact that our nurses are having on these hospitals. You mentioned our, Virginia hospital, and the fact that we have, almost 200 nurses there. They are making a significant impact on that culture in a very positive way. They are contributing so much. And so we are so excited to start interviewing these nurses so you can hear their stories and get inspired and hopefully, identify whether or not this is something that you want to consider. So we want to thank you for joining us on this episode to learn about our nurses and why they're interested in coming into the U.S. And hopefully that you'll stay tuned and learn why we call them our culture shifters. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us on the Culture Shifters.
If this story resonated with you,
Share it with someone who needs to hear it.
and if you're a nurse feeling called to something more,
We see you, and we'd be honored to be a part of your journey.
and if you're a healthcare leader committed to stronger,
More sustainable culture, we'd love to connect.
you can learn more and continue the conversation with us at NurseMatch.com.
Until next time, keep showing up
Keep leading with purpose.
and keep shaping the culture of care.